if you want to start your own firm, go to the suburbs, go to the rural areas. Those places are underserved. I tell you what, in the first 2 years, I didn't have a single employee, Jeff. And so my income actually went down. They really believed in what I was trying to do, and I was able to build this entire firm.
Welcome to the J. Sterling Hughes Show, where we share how we have built our family law firm from 0 to 25 plus lawyers and 15 million in revenue. My guest today is a returning guest, and I'm super excited to have back for our newly formed Masters of Family Law series. Welcome back, Jonathan Breeden in North Carolina.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeff. I appreciate you having me back on. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and hopefully we can share some good information. I think the last time we were together, we shared a lot of good stuff, and I think we'll do a good job today too.
I'm excited. So, Jonathan, as I was explaining to you prior to the show, before we started, that I'm doing a Masters of Family Law series where I'm interviewing highly successful family lawyers that have built a family law practice over 2 million. And you have built a very productive, very profitable, really outstanding family law firm in North Carolina. And I would love for you to share your story for our guests, because so many of the people listening are thinking about or have started, and they're kind of working through. And so you've learned a lot along the way that is going to be helpful and add value to others. So if you can, tell your story, like from where you grew up and then getting into law school, and then just kind of pick it up from there.
Yeah, I mean it's it's an interesting story, and it has a very good ending, but it definitely had some ups and downs along the way. I grew up in Laurinburg, North Carolina, a small town with 20,000 people on the North Carolina-South Carolina line, and not very far from south of the border. If you've ever been down I-95 at the North Carolina-South Carolina border, there's a Mexican-themed park sideshow type thing that has some rides and stuff there. A lot of people, if you've been down I-95, you know where it is. I grew up not very far from there. I decided I wanted to be an attorney in the 9th grade when I read the Federalist Papers. I had one of those teachers.
You read the Federalist Papers in 9th grade?
I did. In North Carolina at the time, I required a civics course, and I now live in. I still live. I'm a divorce attorney in the suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina now. But and so required a civics course, and part of that civics course was to read some of the Federalist Papers. And I had one of those teachers, right? Everybody has those teachers in life, and I had a teacher. He was an old school football coach from the 1970s named Spencer Willard. He was a brilliant man, and he sort of did Socratic method, and we sat in a circle and we read these papers and we analyzed them, and you had to argue the different sides of it. And I found the entire thing fascinating, how these regular people had decided to form a government for the people, by the people, separate and apart from the king. And I thought, well, this is really neat. And I had this overarching sense of justice, that's sort of innate in me. And I could really feel for these people that were going through it, which is why I love still today to go to Colonial Williamsburg in Williamsburg, Virginia, where they have a lot of they've rebuilt many of the colonial buildings, and they have the reenactors, and they're all dressed up, and they'll talk to you about what their time was and their problem with the king and all that stuff. I find that absolutely fascinating. If you've not been there, if you listen to this, go to Colonial Williamsburg. It is worth the trip for that work. But no, so I decided at that point I wanted to be an attorney. I was the son of a small business owner. My father was a CPA. My mom was an emergency room nurse. I quickly saw that my dad could come to all of my ball games, all of my plays, and anything I had, and my mom could come to a few because my mom was at the hospital and my dad had control of his time because he was self-employed. And while he never made $1 million at it, he was always happy going to work because he worked for himself. And I could see the value of controlling your time, and I could see the value of whatever you did for yourself, even if you didn't make very much money. And so I quickly determined that I didn't want to be a CPA, but I thought if I could be an attorney, it was something I could work for myself. I could have a license. Family law was not on the thing then. I really wanted to do criminal defense as I was coming through high school doing law explorers and stuff like that. I went to NC State, graduated in 1996 with a political science degree, and then went to Campbell University's law school. And one of the reasons I went to Campbell University's law school was because it had a start your own law firm program, and at the school. And I really thought I wanted to start my own law firm and give a whack at this. And it was also a very practical law school, trial ad, on your feet, that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Not a lot of theory. The bigger law schools, Duke, Carolina, Wake Forest, spend a whole lot more time on theory than they do on what actually making a living. And I felt like that Campbell would be better for me because I really wanted to come out and work for myself, and I needed as much practical experience as I could get if I was going to make a go of this straight out of law school. So in 2000, I graduated from law school. I came right here to the suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina, to a town called Garner, North Carolina. The most famous person from Garner, North Carolina, currently is Scotty McCreery, the country music star who won American Idol about 15 years ago. And
I've never heard of him. So
yeah, anyway, he's a big country music singer. He still lives in Garner. He's an NC State graduate, and a really nice guy from everybody I know that knows him. But anyway, so I came here in suburbs. It was growing fast. I figured, if I could probably make a living here, even if I wasn't a good lawyer, because it was growing so fast. It was an underserved area. I do think that
so about this is about 2000, right? When you got out of law school?
yeah, well, when I got to the county in 2000, it probably had about 160,000 people. In 1992, it
Okay.
had 100. It had 160 in 1992. It had about 200, 210 when I got here, and I think now it has no. Wait a minute. It had 120 in 1992. When I get
Okay.
here, it's got about a little under about 175, and it now has almost 280,000 people. So you're
Wow.
talking
A
about
lot of growth.
really fast growing area in the suburbs of Raleigh, but an
Well,
underserved area.
one second. Let me get the context
Yeah,
right. So you graduated from Campbell Law School in 2000, right?
correct.
Okay, and that's when you went from Campbell to Garner.
Correct. And
Okay.
that was about 30 minutes. At that time, Campbell was in a town called Bowie's Creek. The law school is now in downtown Raleigh, right next to the state capitol and the North Carolina Supreme Court. And Garner is right there next to Raleigh. So Bowie's Creek was about 45 minutes south of Raleigh, and Garner actually shares a border with Raleigh. So I can be in downtown Raleigh in 20 minutes. So I'm in the suburbs, and it's an underserved area. And that was intentional, right? Because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realize that there are a lot of legal deserts out there, Jeff. And I had a professor who taught me start your own law firm, and he was like, if you'll just stay out of the cities, Jonathan, you're going to make a living, even if you're not a good lawyer, because there's not enough lawyers. And he's turned out to
So
be absolutely right.
one second. You picked Garner because underserved, and what did you base that on? Was it the growth and just the lawyers, or
Right.
how'd
I
you
looked at the
determine that?
number of lawyers on the state bar website. Well, it didn't really have a state bar. I looked at the list that they printed out a list back then. You know what I mean? I looked at the number of attorneys. I looked at I drove around. I didn't know anybody in this area, right? Like I wanted to be near Raleigh, but I knew I didn't want to be in Raleigh because Raleigh had too many lawyers. To this day, Raleigh still has too many lawyers, and all the counties that touch it don't have enough. And so if
Mhm.
nobody takes anything outside of this, they're listening to it. If you want to start your own firm, go to the suburbs, go to the rural areas. Those places are underserved. In North Carolina, 80 of the 100 counties are legal deserts. Legal desert is
Wow.
defined as having less than one lawyer for every 1,000 individuals. Um, Both Johnson and Harnett County, which are two of my three primary counties, along with Wake, which is where Raleigh is, are legal deserts. And so I think if they want to start their own law firm or grow a law firm, would go into the suburbs or go into the rural areas, they would have a greater chance of success because where there's not enough lawyers, just supply and demand economics. And so most of the cities have too many lawyers. And 2000, when I came out, Raleigh had too many lawyers. Today, Raleigh has too many lawyers because Raleigh's the number one place to live in America. Everybody wants to be in Raleigh. But if you're in the suburbs, there's not enough attorneys and they're fast growing because there's not enough places to live in Raleigh. So everybody's coming to the suburbs. And so
Mhm.
that's one way to make a living and be successful is just go where there's not a very high supply of lawyers.
Yeah, we have the same exact experience here in Wisconsin. Our most productive offices are the ones out in the rural communities from a financial and efficiency perspective.
That's exactly right. And so as I look to expand into other areas, maybe not right here in the immediate area, I have four offices, but they're all within 20 minutes of each other. One in Raleigh,
Mhm.
one in Harnett County and Angier, one in Smithfield, which is also in Johnson County where I'm at, and then one in Garner in Johnson County. As I start to look at other areas of the state that are underserved and where I want to go in the next phase of this law firm, I'm definitely not going to the cities. I'm probably going to go to the suburbs, whether it be the
Yeah.
suburbs of Wilmington, the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina, the suburbs of Asheville, something like that. But all of those cities have too many lawyers, and the counties around them don't have enough.
Okay, so you go to Garner and you plant your flag. What? Walk us forward from
I
there.
tell you what, in the first 2 years, I didn't have a single employee, Jeff. I did it all myself. I was a single guy. I didn't have a girlfriend or any of that stuff. And I forwarded the calls to a StarTAC flip phone that had a little antenna that came out of it. And so I would go to court and I would sit there and wait for them to give me court appointed criminal work and court appointed Department of Social Services, Family Services work, helping people get their kids out of foster care. And people would call and I'd go out of the courtroom and I'd go, "This is Jonathan Breeden." And I'd answer the phone out in the hall and I'd come back into the courtroom and people made fun of me. And then I would stay in court. I'd watch other attorneys try cases. I would do the court appointed cases they gave me. And then I would come back out to my office, which was about 20 minutes. Another thing was I wasn't right next to the courthouse, right? I wasn't near any courthouse. So you have the courthouse lawyers, the ones that are across the street, but they were all from there. And I didn't know anybody. So I went to the suburbs where nobody was from there. So it would be easier to get work. That's another thing.
Yeah.
Don't be right across the street from the courthouse. If you don't, that's another truth bomb for this podcast. But no, I did it myself. I would write the court date letters. I would draft all the documents. And I think when I started, if I could make $2,500, I could break even. I think my living expenses were $1,200 and my operating expenses were $1,300.
Okay, so you had to make that in a month, $2,500 in a month,
That's it, $2,500 in a month.
which 30,000 a year.
Yep.
So, okay, all right. So you were in the first 2 years, you were getting the vast majority of your cases, as I'm gathering here, from appointments,
Correct.
guardian appointments, PDs, whatever. Okay,
Right. Yeah, we didn't have a
all
public
right.
defender, so I was getting criminal cases. I was representing people in child support court, parents that didn't pay their child support. I was representing parents in DSS court, stuff like that. And so, but
Did you have your own office like set apart, or were you working from home?
no, I had an office. I rented an office
Okay.
here at the same intersection I'm at now. And but what was coming to me that would have been retained was people were young families with custody cases and real estate closings because area going fast. I didn't want to do real estate closings because I thought real estate was boring. I'd interned at a real estate office and I thought search and title, you could just shoot me. I wanted to be in a courtroom. I wanted to be on my feet. And so I didn't do any real estate closings, but I did start taking some of these custody cases and I found that I really enjoyed them. I enjoyed working with the people. I enjoyed particularly helping fathers that weren't seeing their children at all get a visitation
Mm-hmm.
plan where they could see their children. That meant a lot to me. And these people, of course, paid a lot more than the court appointed list paid. And so as I started to grow the business, I grew it with these sort of things. And I didn't do equitable distribution, property distribution, alimony. I just started doing basic, simple custody cases and child support. And that was it. And I did that I probably didn't get into the property cases and the alimony for another 3 or 4 years. Because remember, I didn't
Are,
even make it.
are those just more complicated or
Yeah,
something?
they are. I mean, you get into inventory affidavits, business evaluations, all of that stuff. You have to have staff to study the bank statements and the financial
Okay.
affidavits. I didn't have any of that, right? It was just me. So after 2 years, I hired a part-time secretary for 20 hours a week, and she was there
Mm-hmm.
for a year. And then I got a different part-time secretary for 30 hours a week. I didn't get a full-time employee for 4 years.
So we're talking 2004
Yeah.
time frame when you finally had your first full-time teammate.
Yeah, 2004,
Wow.
2005. Yeah.
Okay. Now, was this an office support worker or was this another lawyer?
No, I just had different people coming to be secretaries, and these were not trained
Okay.
paralegals. These were moms looking to do stuff while their kids were in school, friends of mine, stuff like that. But it wasn't, it was a long time before I got an actual paralegal or an actual attorney. I probably didn't hire either one until I hired an actual paralegal who was a paralegal in 2007, and I hired the first associate attorney in 2009.
Wow. Okay. So 9 years you operated your practice without another attorney. It's just a solo practitioner.
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And look, I was doing fine, right? Like it wasn't like I couldn't pay my bills. And I got married in 2005, and in 2007, I had my first child in 2009. That's why I hired the associate, was because I was working so much. I needed somebody to help me do this work. And at the time, I actually didn't have a paralegal when I hired the associate. I hired the associate and had them do the paralegal work. I hired them straight out of school. There were too many lawyers in. I paid them $37,000, and they were cheaper than paralegals who knew what they were doing that were getting
Wow.
$50,000. Now, they
So
were
this is
probably not as
2009. This
good.
is only
Right. They probably weren't as good as a paralegal who knew what they were doing, but I could afford 37,000 and they could cover court hearings. So that's what I did.
okay. So in the years leading up to hiring this first associate in 2009, do you recall what your top line revenue was? Like when you look back on that, do you remember what that was?
I think I was bringing in about 30,000 a month. Um,
Okay.
and I think I was keeping about nine, maybe 8 or 9. I was making about $100,000 probably. I think we were bringing in about 300, and I was keeping about 100 of it. And
Okay.
we paid.
So what you were spending the 200 on? Obviously, you had your paralegal for a while there.
Right. We would have,
Office
right. We had
expenses. What else
secretaries,
were you spending money
paralegals.
on?
We were spending a lot of money on advertising, way more money on
Okay.
advertising than we probably should have been because we didn't know what was working. Right. We didn't understand. I didn't understand ROI. I had no tracking numbers. Like this is before all of that. Right. I had a
Yeah.
website that I was spending way too much money on, and some other stuff. So that was a mistake. We were over subscribed on advertising for the amount of money we were making, and we didn't know what
Yeah.
I didn't know what advertising was working because I wasn't tracking it.
Yeah. So when the calls were coming in, were you still answering them, or was it whoever was in the
No,
office?
I had a secretary that was answering the calls then. Yeah, we had a
Okay.
secretary, and from 2009 to 2015, we had different associates, but we always had one associate during that 6 year period, and they largely did the paralegal work. Every once in a while, we'd have a
Hmm.
paralegal come and go, but we primarily ran it on a legal secretary who was really good, a
Hmm.
young associate straight out of law school who didn't know anything, and me. Was really the structure from probably '09 to 15.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So for those years, that 6 year period of time, um, what was your revenue?
I think the revenue then had gone to about 40,000 a month. So something
Okay.
somewhere between 400 and 500 a year.
Okay.
And Yeah, it was about that. And it sort of stayed there. But then it went backwards. And so that's the
Hold
other.
on before it goes
Yeah.
backwards. So, your client mix, were these primarily family clients at this point?
Correct, correct. In 2007, when I hired my first paralegal from Raleigh, who came from working for one of the bigger Raleigh law firms, and she came here and she said, if you want to be like these people in Raleigh that you look up to, that I used to work for, that I consider my friends, you got to quit going to court every day. Because every day I
Hmm.
was going to court doing these court appointed cases, every day. And I was calling back from court continuing or canceling consults for family law to try to get a bond lowered on a cocaine dealer when I wasn't going to win, but I had to try so the client would learn to trust me. So when I got him a plea in 3 months to something reasonable, he would take the plea. And so she's
Yeah.
like, you're running off consults that might pay you three, four, $5,000 to do a custody case for a $300 cocaine dealer case that you're going to plead out in 2 months. She goes, that
Yeah.
makes no sense. She said, you got to stop going to court. She goes, these people I work for study the rules of evidence to stay out of court. And you're going every day. Like, you've got to stop. You need to be back here working the cases, providing a better client service to these family law cases, because that's your future, not $300 court appointed cases. And she was
Do you
absolutely right.
recall when?
And I got off the court appointed list in 2007.
Okay, so that's when you got off. All right, so you got off in '07, and then for those 6 years, in '09 to 15, your incomes, your top line stayed about the same,
Correct.
like
Correct.
basically 500 grand a year ish
Right.
for the year. Okay,
Maybe less.
what happened in 15 that changed that?
Well, I had a fine law website, and I was spending like $5,000 or $6,000 a month on this website. And it,
No, hold on, no, what?
yeah,
Say it again.
yeah, I had a fine law website that wasn't working. And you can go Google what fine law was doing with some backlinks and stuff at that time that wasn't working. And Google was punishing the fine law sites. And so all of a
Yeah,
sudden, 90% of my business comes off my website, and my website stops working, and it doesn't. They don't get it fixed, and
That
it's
happened in 15?
yeah, in 14 and 15.
Okay.
And so my
Okay.
income actually went down. And when the last associate left in 2015, I did not replace her because I could not afford to replace her. And I just did it with my wife, who all of a sudden becomes my paralegal. Well, when my 3-year old is in preschool, and the
Wow.
same good legal secretary I'd had for 6 years, but in 15, she left too. And so we went and got we got a pretty good paralegal to help us for a couple of years after that. But yeah, so our income went down, and my wife had to come up here, and everybody listening that's ever started know how that goes. And she really did a great job. I mean, my wife went to Duke. She's smarter than I am, but she had to become a paralegal because we had to help get this work done, and we really couldn't afford to pay anybody else. So, we had 2 kids at that point. My wife was staying home with them, and it was pretty stressful there for a while.
Okay, so I'm still stuck on the fine law thing. I'm going to get to this whole wife thing because I know that's got to be fraught with a whole lot of stories. But fine law was charging you 6 to 7 grand a month for the website, and they were supposedly sending advertising to it, and you were getting clients from that.
Correct. And so it was supposed to be
Okay.
getting, SEO on it every day, blogs. It was supposed to be, you know, getting promoted. And so I think what they decided to do was to try to do a bunch of backlinking. And I'm not an expert
Spam,
on this.
basically.
You know way
Yeah.
more about digital marketing than I do because you own Rocket Clicks. But they were doing a bunch of backlink stuff that got punished by Google. And Google didn't want to see those backlinks, and they weren't legitimate, like you earned them, like they were linking them to other sites and stuff like that, is what I believe they were doing. I'm not absolutely sure, but that is my basic understanding. And as a
Okay.
result, my website that was doing really well stopped really working at all, but yet I was still paying that much money.
Wow. Okay. Holy moly. Okay, so you're that whole website thing implodes. Your wife comes and joins the business, and your income drops. You recall what it dropped down to?
I don't remember, but I was able to keep mine somewhat level by eliminating the associate position,
Okay. So
and
your
my
your
wife
your
coming
personal
and
take
working for
home
free.
remained somewhat the same.
Yeah, but the
Okay.
best decision we made in 2016, we get out of the fine law contract because it's over. We don't renew it, and we hire Postali out of Columbus, Ohio, to become our marketing firm. And that's when the story starts to change because they built me one of the top 5 family law websites in North Carolina, and within 18 months, I was dominating the search results, and I had more leads than I knew what to do with.
Awesome. Okay, so let's unpack that. So you go to them and say, "Hey, man, I just got totally hosed by fine law. What can you do?" And they start taking over your marketing, and they've done an amazing job over the last whatever we're going on almost 9 years now, right?
Correct. They really have done a good job for me over that time. Yeah, and look, and that was a hard thing, right? Like to make that decision because I mean, while the fine law site was not doing what we needed it to do, that was the only website I'd ever had. And I
Hmm.
mean, I'd been with them for 12 or 13 years at that point. And so it was a big decision and a hard decision to make, right? Because if your entire world, and it's not good that 90% of my business came on my website, but it's where I was, right? I'm in the
Yeah.
suburbs, fast growing, nobody's from here. They're here 3 years, they're on to somewhere else. They don't know their neighbors, all they work in Raleigh, they live out here. And so it was really a hard decision to make, but when we made it, and of course they wanted 4,000, 5,000 a month to build a website too and do the marketing as well. Like they weren't going to come in and do it for $1,500, not at the level it
Hmm.
needed to be done. And so
Yeah.
that was another big commitment to say, all right, I'm going to commit to them, this amount of money. And
Mhm.
and they did. And they had to start over from scratch. Breedenlaw.com was my website, but it had all these backlinks and all these bad scores on Google that they had to scrap it and build breedenfirm.com, my current website. And they had to
Mhm.
convince me to give up my domain and my domain history and all of that and go to a brand new domain, which I didn't really want to do. But they were absolutely right. The only way to get where I was going to go was to start completely over.
Yeah. Wow. So once they took over, how long did it take before you start to feel the influx of clients?
I would say it took about a year. I mean, it took 6 to 7 months to get the website up and going, and then it
Yeah.
takes months. But by the beginning of 17, it was really starting to cook, and we started to get more calls and more leads. But at that point, I didn't know anything about leads, set, shows, hires. I didn't know what a client relationship manager was. I didn't know what return on investment. I still didn't really have tracking numbers. Like I just knew all of a sudden I was working 7 days a week and I was making more money than I ever made, but I was doing all the work.
Yeah. So you're working 7 days a week,
I
humping it
right.
hard. Okay.
Because I was afraid that I couldn't repeat the number to where I could go hire somebody. Right, like
Yeah.
I was happy when the last associate left in 2015 because I was struggling to pay him, and so I had this fear of scarcity, this mindset of like, if I hire somebody, I might not be able to pay him because I won't be able to make this number the next month to pay him because I didn't
Hmm.
understand how I was earning the money I was earning. I just knew I was earning it. I didn't understand
Hmm.
leads, sets, shows, hires, referrals, paid in full, any of the stuff that I learned from Richard James and I've learned from you and your staff over the years. Like, I didn't know any of that stuff. And so all I knew was my website visits went up, the calls went up, and I was making more money, but I didn't understand how or why.
So when Postali started getting your site to generate clients, this would have been about the end of 17 or so when it just became this tidal wave of new calls coming in. Pick up the story from there. What'd you do after that?
Right. Well, from probably early 17 to the middle of 19, I started hiring varying paralegals straight out of paralegal school. I got some of my wife's friends to help me. My wife kept
Hmm.
helping me. We had different legal secretaries come and go. And we all sort of, it was kind of a hodgepodge. In 2018, I found this thing called Clio. That made a big difference because then I could start doing the billing online because I was still billing like writing it on the inside of a physical file in 2017. So in 20
Wow.
January 1st, 2018, I
Cool.
go to Clio, which was still fairly
So wait. How,
documented.
how how often were you getting out bills between 17 and 19 before pre-Clio?
Not often. I mean, it was because what we would have to do is we would have to take the physical file, type it into an Excel spreadsheet, and then send it out. And so what we were doing is we were sending a bill when we thought we were about out of money, and then
Uh-huh.
we would get in the hole and we would eat it. And
Oh
so that
wow.
was that
Okay.
was and so there's where Clio made a big difference because we could record our time contemporaneously into the system and we
Yep.
could look at the screen and know how much we billed and how much we had in trust at any one time. And so that made a big difference in 2018
Wow.
as well.
So so I'm just imagining 17 to 19 whenever you're looking at the inside of your manila folder and then having to transcribe that into Excel and shoot it out. So I'm guessing here, Jonathan, that your clients were getting a bill once every couple months at best.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder how what just take a wild guess. What was your collection rate during
You
that
know,
period of time? If
I
you
still
really honestly,
I still think it was pretty decent. You know what I mean? Even though I didn't get the bills out as much because I wasn't charging very much. I think I was charging
okay.
$200 an hour, $225 an hour. It
Okay.
wasn't much. I think I was charging the paralegals at $100 an hour or something, and we were trying to get $6,500 to start. And most of the cases could be done for about 6,500. So
Okay.
we didn't eat it that bad, but we definitely weren't
I wonder how much
collecting
lost
now.
time you had though.
So
I wonder how much time you had where you actually didn't bill for it though.
oh, I mean, who knows? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
right.
yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean, it was, it's wild to even think about it. You know, when you think about where it is now versus where it was then. But yeah, but it was, I mean, everything you learn from, right? And Clio was
Mhm.
a great invention, and I'm glad we went with Clio, and that made a difference, and that made it much easier to get the bills out, and we started sending the bills way more regularly when we got Clio in 2018, and that was good. And then and then by 2019, I had more than I could do, more than my wife could help me do, more than these out of school brands. And the other thing is, I didn't think I could afford real paralegal. Well, not real paralegals, paralegals who knew what they were doing. Because paralegals who knew what they
Mhm.
were doing were getting like 50 in Raleigh then, and in the suburbs, it's always
Mhm.
tough. I'm not charging what they charge in Raleigh. I'm charging a suburb price which I don't do that now. Now I charge what they charge in Raleigh, but I did then. And
Hmm.
I think I would have probably been better off if I would have invested in one of those experienced paralegals and paid the 50 or 55 that they wanted at the time, versus going with these kids straight out of school that were getting 36, that didn't know what they were doing. I would have been more efficient and made more money if I would have just invested in a paralegal who knew what they were doing.
Yeah. Okay. So 19 comes around, business is rolling in. What happened next?
Um, I began to realize that I need help. I need some sort of, I need some scripts to answer the phone. Like I knew we weren't answering the phone very well. I knew we were letting
Uh-huh.
leads go away. I had gotten Ruby Receptionist by then, so I was answering most of the calls, even if we weren't answering them. But our follow up, we weren't really following up that well with it, and I began to realize that I was sending so many cases to Raleigh attorneys, and the Raleigh attorneys weren't sending anything back to me, that if I could find an attorney in Raleigh to do my Raleigh cases, I could grow the business. Because I didn't want to do
Okay.
the Raleigh cases. I wanted to stay in the suburbs. And so in August of 2019, I hired an experienced attorney out of Raleigh to come work for me. And the two of us doubled the business overnight in 1 month.
Wow.
I,
Okay.
I was doing about 40 to 50 a month in 2019. And the first month after I hired the attorney from Raleigh, we did 100.
Wow. Okay.
And her and I did 100 every month, almost all the way until March of 2020, when the world came to an end with COVID. Well, it's the business stopped.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So,
Right. Right.
but that
So
showed me what was possible.
you yourself were collecting 40 to 50,000 a month.
Correct.
And you brought this new attorney on and she also started collecting that much right away because
Correct.
you have the business coming in,
Correct.
you just couldn't take care of it.
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that you cruised along until, the COVID thing happened
Right.
and then
Yeah.
obviously the cliff effect happened
Yeah,
like it did for us and
and
everyone.
right, and so at that point when COVID happens, I've got a brand new paralegal, I've got this really good associate, and I've got a pretty good legal secretary, and we're doing well. And then COVID happens, and everything comes to a stop. I was able to get the PPP loan, and I was able to keep everybody employed. Fortunately, I do domestic violence protective orders and emergency custody. The courts were still doing domestic violence protective orders and emergency custody cases. They weren't doing anything else. I was able to get enough of those along with the PPP loans to keep everybody employed. In June of 2020, the all three employees leave. The associate attorney doesn't want to keep coming out to the suburbs. She gets an offer to stay just in Raleigh, and I think she was looking to work part time, and they gave her a position where she could work part time, and where she got to collect a percentage of what she collected, and they didn't care
Hmm.
how much she actually did because she got a percentage of what she collected. Same sort of the way you've set up Sterling Lawyers. And I think that was a good deal for her. She's still there. She's doing a great job. We're still friends. The paralegal was a single mom. The courts reopened and the schools didn't. And she was trying to figure out what her daycare was going to be and how this was going to work. And she couldn't get it figured out while she's with me. Eventually she does figure it out. We're still friends too. And then the secretary cooped up with a guy for 3 months. He doesn't give her a ring. She realized she didn't want to marry him. She goes back to California. And so all of a
Oh,
sudden
wow.
in June of 2020, I have no employees.
What,
Uh,
what a
but
month.
yet I still got all these cases, right? And
Yep.
so, all the blood leaves your body. You cry a little bit. You don't sleep very well. But you know what? You get back up. You start doing it again, right? You start running ads. You start interviewing people. You start hiring the first people through the door. Probably not the best people, but you had to have bodies, and so you end
Yeah.
up churning through a lot of bodies that were coming through here. But we got the work done. It didn't always look pretty, but we were able to get the work done, and the business started to really grow.
So as you finished out 2020, do you recall what your revenue was as a firm in 2020?
Oh my goodness, I think it was about 700,000, which is what I'd done in
Okay.
2019. So basically,
Okay.
300 I did 300,000 in the first 6 7 months of 19, and I did right. Yeah, I did 300,000 in the first 7 months of 19, and I did 400,000 in the last 4 months of 19 to get to 700. I did 300 in the first 3 months of 2020, and I did 400 the rest of the year to do 700 again. So that's what we
Hmm.
did in 19 and 20. So anyway, it's so yeah, so it was yeah, it was interesting. So but that's okay though. We kept hiring, we kept doing things. I also found a coach. That's when I found Richard James and your practice mastered his coaching program. I was looking for a
Hmm.
coach at the end of 2019, going into 2020, because I knew I needed scripts and I needed to learn how I was going to structure this, because I already knew then I had enough leads that I could probably get another associate and another paralegal, but I needed to start to get a structure because I didn't know how to do this. I just knew I had all these leads. And so that was probably another one of the great decisions we made, was getting into a coaching program where he started to teach me about, leads, set, shows, hires, tracking numbers, knowing
Hmm.
your numbers. He told me what a client relationship manager was, a CRM. I didn't know what a CRM was. The first one I ever got was Clio Grow. I now have Four Eyes. But Clio Grow's done a great job now. I think HubSpot, Lawmatics. I mean, if you don't have a CRM, get a CRM, because you need to be able to track
Hmm.
these leads and know where they're coming from. Postali started hooking me up with unlimited number tracking numbers. I probably have 40 tracking numbers now. And so they got me a lot.
So you're dropping a lot of great
Yeah.
stuff. I'm going to slow it down here
Okay.
because the marketing is real key, because you've done an incredible job with your marketing program. So back in 20 now, what did your marketing mix look like? What are the different channels that you're in, and how would you characterize those?
In 2020, all we did was the website with Postali and a Fine Law Top Spot. And I think that's it.
And then, so for the website, you're getting organic out of that. You're probably getting the map out of that,
Correct,
I'm
correct. The
guessing.
maps, right.
Okay.
So and we had already gotten the other locations so we could be on the map 4 different times, because we had 4 locations.
So you had 4 physical offices
Correct,
in 20.
correct.
Oh, wow.
But I
Okay.
only I only
Got it.
practice out of one. The other ones were to just be able to meet people. And before COVID, I would go once a week to each one and do consults. After COVID and the invention
Mhm.
of Zoom, I don't go to them anymore, but I still have them so I can stay on the map.
So your calls are coming in 20, and they're just being handled by whoever can pick up the phone.
Correct,
There's really no system behind
correct,
it. You're dropping calls.
correct.
It's a
Right,
probably pretty chaotic.
correct.
Okay.
But
So then you find Okay, go
yeah,
ahead. You
I
find
find
Richard
Richard
James, and
James.
you start learning all of these things about tightening up your funnel. Walk through that.
Yeah, so I find Richard James and your practice mastered in May of 20. And I was actually set to go to an Ernie Sevenson conference in New Orleans in April of 2020. That ended up becoming a Zoom conference, but I did get to do it by Zoom, and I heard a lot of great speakers. And Ernie the attorney's out there as well. His thing is solos and very small people that outsource everything, but he has a great program and a great podcast. And I can't say enough about him and his program. But I was already bigger than what he was targeting, right? So as you go look for a coach, make sure you find a coach that specialty is the size that you are and where you're going to be, right? Like, you don't want one that you're already bigger than, and you don't want one that's not working with people as small as you, right? And so the good thing about Richard James was his sort of sweet spot appeared to me to be between about 700 and 2 million. And so I was at the
Mhm.
bottom of that, and that's a long way to go, all the way to 2 million or whatever, if I would just do what he talked about doing. And so I learned about systemization stuff, and that was really, really important, because I didn't, like I said, I didn't know any of this stuff. I was able to develop phone scripts where we could answer the phones. I learned about offshoring employees, and he helped me
Mhm.
get my first employee in Mexico, which I think we got in 2021. Which, now we have 4 employees in El Salvador and one in the Philippines. But to get that first employee to answer the phones in Mexico was key, because I trained them, and their only job was to answer the phone and follow the script that he helped me write.
Mhm.
And that was
So
really,
would
really
you
important.
recall, just from a chronological standpoint, Jonathan, I'm trying to get my arms around where did you start first? What was the first thing you started to work on, and the next thing? Because I mean, you have low hanging fruit. Probably you realize this with Richard James. So in 21, when you start to get integrated with Richard James, and you start to take this machine that you have built that's kind of like spitting out a whole lot of stuff, but you're not able to capture it all. Where did you start
The
first?
phones. You fix the phones
Okay.
first. because that's the biggest leaking budget bucket, and that's where you can make the most money the fastest. If you can get the phones answered every time correctly with a script, building a relationship with somebody, get their information, and get them booked for a consult or get their information so you can
Hmm.
follow up with them. That is the fastest way to grow a business. And the first thing I did was fix the phones.
How did you do that? How did you fix the phones?
Well, I took his scripts of the 11 steps to a phone call and I made it my own. And I got the person that was here to start following it. And then I hired somebody in Mexico shortly thereafter and trained them on the script and got them to start
Hmm.
following it. And we ended
Hmm.
up getting a CRM through Four Eyes, which Richard James also owns, along with Bert Diener. And that CRM actually puts questions on the screen that says, ask this question, and if they say yes or no, it gives you the next question to ask. And so I got
Yeah.
somebody in Mexico to start following the script that was on the screen in front of them, and that made a big difference. And then it freed up the people
Hold on one second here. So
okay.
I want to point out something to our listeners here because Jonathan and I have got to know each other through Richard James. I'm also a member of his group, and so we've met each other a number of times at these different conferences. And Jonathan, one of the things that I've noticed that you do exceptionally well is that you implement without pride getting stuck in the way, like you know better. You just, okay, I'm going to implement that, and you just go do it. And you don't really care if things break along the way. You just implement it and then get it done. So I'm reading between the lines. I didn't know you back here in 21 when all this was going on, but you started implementing pretty religiously. It sounds like every single thing that Richard was telling you to do without questioning it and just say, I'm going to do it and make it work.
Right.
Now, everyone listening here, this story is about to absolutely explode because right now you're doing about 700 grand in revenue. And that was 4 years ago. With where you're at today and what you've been able to accomplish is astounding. And I'm really excited to unpack the rest of your story as we kind of roll through this. So I'm going to let you take it over from here. You fixed the phones with these different methodologies. And then what did you do?
We also started working on masterminding the client experience. We wrote a book. We took he provided a outline of a book. I took that outline and my wife and I turned it into a North Carolina family law book using the outline, and we used the book as a lead generator. We also created a brag wall in our office with some of the awards we had won. We also started shooting more and more YouTube videos where I was answering questions in 3 minute increments. I was doing that with James Publishing and James Marketing Amplifier and getting those out onto YouTube. We also created KPIs for everybody that worked for us, key performance indicators that we started tracking that required people to bill a certain number of hours. We had to return phone calls a certain rate, stuff like that, so that everybody knew what they were supposed to do. We started writing job descriptions for all the positions in the office. And one of the other things he told me to do was hire and create a position and hire a client care coordinator whose only job is to make the clients happy. And that was crucial because that person not only helps make the clients happy, they also are my collections person. And so they build the relationship with the client. And when things are going bad, they come to me and they tell me, the client's upset with their lawyer and I try to make it right. But they go to bat for that client. And then when they call that client and we need them to pay money, they're more likely to pay the money because they have a relationship with her. And that's been a big
Mm-hmm.
important thing for us as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we just started doing everything that he said do. Like, I mean, it was really sort of
Mm-hmm.
all encompassing. And look, through all of this, we have unbelievable turnover. This is the great American quit out. We don't have a single attorney stay 1 year, but we don't have a single employee stay 1 year between 2018 and 2023. But yet, despite the
Wow.
turnover that's greater than McDonald's, I was able to continue to grow this thing because I could plug people into these systems. I started making Loom videos on how to do the jobs that people could watch. So I would have the person that was leaving in the 2 weeks notice. I would have them make a video of what they did so that the next person could watch it, and
Mm-hmm.
and be able to sort of create some continuity and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't pretty. I mean, all the turnover and the lawyers quitting,
It was effective, though. It
well,
was
it
effective.
ultimately ended up being effective because I didn't quit, right? I mean, I just didn't quit, and I didn't let anything that went wrong derail me from where I was trying to go.
Well, hello, Jeff here. My team and I put out a weekly newsletter designed for family law practitioners to help you grow and build your practice. So if you go to my website at jsterlinghughes.com, that's Hughes, that's jsterlinghughes.com, and subscribe, it would mean the world to me. And what I will do for you there is I will send you weekly content to help you build and grow your practice, as well as news and developments in the greater world of family law. Thank you, and back to the show. All right. So in 21, you conclude the year. Do you recall your revenue and your teammate? How many employees did you have?
We had 8 or 9 employees then. I think we had maybe 2 attorneys, a paralegal. We probably had 1 in Mexico, and then maybe 2 in Mexico. I think I had 1 in Guadalajara, 1 in Puerto Vallarta. So we probably had 9 or 10 employees by the end of 21, and we did like 1.2 million.
Oh, okay. So hold on, slow down here a second. So the folks that were on your team in Mexico, they were answering the phones.
Correct.
Right.
And we started making outbound phone.
I want to make that clear because they're probably not native English speakers, and you're in North Carolina, which you kind of have your own language there anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. And yet they were still effective answering the phones for you. You had 2 other attorneys beside yourself?
I think so. Yeah, we had a lot come and go that year, but I think we had 2.
All right. So that was 21. You did 2 point. So you went from 700, you added $500,000 in incremental revenue, top line revenue.
Correct.
To your firm. Okay.
Correct.
And you fixed your phones, you masterminded the client experience,
Right.
shored that up in a whole bunch of different areas, hired a client care coordinator. The client care coordinator in your office, or
Correct.
is it someone that is
in the
remote?
office to try to make the clients happy?
Now, did your marketing spend go up during that time?
No.
That growth?
No,
Okay, so you
I spent a little bit
spent
more
the
money.
same amount of money.
Right. I spent a little bit more money on the website. We redid the website because it was 4 years old in 2020.
Yeah.
That was another thing, right? Where other people were pulling back, I actually invested in a new website with Postali and built a new website in 2020. And so by 21, I had a brand new website that had all the bells, first class bells and whistles. And so it started really cooking where other people were losing market share. I'm gaining market share because I didn't back off and I actually built something better.
So your marketing spend, stayed virtually the same from
Correct.
20 to 21,
Correct.
but your revenue goes up.
Correct.
Wow. So your percent of marketing went way down.
Correct.
Obviously. Okay. Wow. Okay. So you're getting into 22. You're still losing people, right? Because everyone's quitting, going to the next job. The salaries are skyrocketing during this period of time. I remember that. Okay. What happened in 22?
Well, in 22, we did not grow quite as much as we'd grown in some of the other years. In August of 22, the day our 4th associate started, the other 3 quit in July of 22. So 2 of them had been here for about 6 months, and they decided they were going to go out and compete against me, and they were going to take all their cases with them and going to take $100,000 of my money and go and compete against me and leave me on the side of the road. Or so they thought.
Wow. Okay.
And
Let's unpack that story because that's really painful, and I've always kind of had nightmares around those things happening.
Yeah.
So you end the year 21 with 2 associates. You hired a couple more, apparently,
Correct.
to start the year in 22. So you're cruising into the summer with 4 associates plus you.
Right. The 4th one, we're losing them as they come, but what would be plus 4? We lost a couple early in 22.
Okay.
The day he starts, the other 3 quit. One decides to move to Boca Raton, Florida and get married. And the other 2 who'd been here for about 6 months decide they're going to take the cases with them and go compete against me. And so that leaves me with 1 new associate to me, but he had been practicing law for 20 years. He just never done family law. And so it's him and I to do these cases. And we ended up keeping about half of the ones that the 2 that were with me that wanted to take. So I didn't lose all of the cases they had. I lost about half of them.
Yeah.
And so they said they were going to take $120,000 and they took about $50,000, which was a big difference then. I mean, at one time to lose, because if clients want their money back, you got to give it back and you can't have a non-compete.
Right.
So, you spend some time fighting over where the clients are going to stay. I kept about half of them left. About 20% of the ones that left came back or they weren't happy because these were new attorneys. They didn't know what they were doing, but they were convinced that they could just take these cases and, everything would be hunky-dory. And, within 12 months, they were bankrupt and out of business. But it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So
Well,
these
I don't
two
think went
colluded.
bankrupt. They went out of business. So
Yeah. So these two colluded, got together and think, well, if Jonathan can do it, we could do it. So let's just take all of our clients. That'll be the seed capital to get us going, and life will be great. And we'll take these clients that'll basically be our ramp to handling our own and building our own firm from there.
yeah, yeah, that's what. Yeah, and
Was it like, did they give you a notice, or they just said today's our last
I
day?
mean,
They walked
I
in and
mean,
said,
they gave me a notice. The problem was when it became clear to me they were trying to steal all the clients. I wanted them out of here as fast as possible
yeah.
because I needed to try to keep the clients.
Hmm.
And so I didn't want the notice. I wanted them gone so that I could try to
So,
keep the clients.
so in their math, it looked like it would be about 100 to 120,000 dollars in revenue go out the door with them.
Correct.
Turned out to be 50.
Yeah.
Okay, and
And
then some of that 50 even came back later when they screwed the case up.
correct. Correct. It sure did.
Okay,
So yeah,
okay.
so I mean, but here's the thing. Again, you have to decide like are you gonna keep it small and keep it all? Like, could I have just done it with me and the other guy who was here? He did a nice job for us, or was I gonna try to scale it
Mhm.
again? And I had to do some soul searching and ask myself, do I really want to do this again? Can I do this again? Like all
Yeah.
this work, and here's the other thing: I had to go back to working 7 days a week because when they left, I had to the cases I kept from them. I had to do. That's how I convince people to stay with me. I'm like, if you will stay with me, I will do your case. So I ended up with 75 or 80 cases that I had to
Wow.
work myself on top of trying to hire replacements and manage the firm and everything else. So I was back to working 7 days a week again, 70, 80 hours a week. And so everybody's like, oh man, you take these great vacations and you do all this great stuff. But they weren't here in the back half of 2022
Yeah.
when I was here 80 hours a week trying to serve these clients that I had taken and kept from the people who left because they didn't have anybody to do the work.
Yeah. Wow. Surprised you didn't get sick or something.
I mean, it was not a
That's a
pretty it
stressful
was
period of
not a
time.
lot of fun. But I had to do it, right? I had to do it. I had to feed my family. I had to take care of the other employees that were here. I had to take care of my
Mhm.
overseas employees. Like, and that
Yeah.
was the only way to be able to keep moving forward. But here's the
Yeah.
thing. The thing is, you think the world is coming to an end, but the marketing kept going. So in August, I got the most new hires I'd ever gotten in a single month. And that was the month they were gone with me doing the consults and the new guy doing the consults, right? Like it's not like the world was over. I thought the world was over, but my marketing was
Yeah.
still working. The phones were still ringing. I was still answering them the right way. I was still
Yeah.
following up with people. I was still getting 5-star reviews, Jeff. So it was going to be fine. I just needed to
Yeah.
look forward and not think, oh my gosh, the world's ending on July 20th or whatever day they told me.
What one thing you did here that was strategically real important, you didn't panic. Call your marketing put people and tell them to scale it back.
Correct.
Because that's what happens when people start to get overwhelmed, right? They
Correct.
do that and then whoa, 4 months down the road they don't have any business.
Correct.
Is yeah, so keep marketing, everyone. Just keep pushing through. It's gonna be okay.
Correct.
This too shall pass.
Correct.
All right, so you get through that period of time. Did you hire any more
I
associates in
did.
the back half of that
I
year?
did, and I hired two in September of 22, and they both quit in December of 22. It happens, but I then make several really good hires that really turn things around. I get a good client care person. I had the position, but I didn't have the right person in it. I get that person in October of 22. My office manager quits in September of 22 with no notice. The replacement I hire for her in December of 22. Asiemi Sosa, who you met, is phenomenal. And I hire an associate named Ashley Schwartz, who is still here, who is now one of my team leads. And these people are
Mhm.
really good people. They really believed in what I was trying to do. And I was able to build this entire firm around those three personalities and those three people because they believed in me. They believed in what we were trying to do and they wanted to do things the right way. And people want to be with people that want to do things the right way. And if you can get the right people, they will help you attract the right people. I didn't have the right
Yeah.
people in 21 and 22, but once I got these people I could build around, then I was able
Mhm.
to attract the people that I really wanted to have.
Yeah. Yeah. That's inspiring. All right, so you conclude 22. Let's talk about numbers there. What'd you do in 22 top line?
Like 1.5. 1.5 million. It
Okay.
wasn't a lot different because of all the turnover than what we did. And
Well, you still increased it 300 grand
I did, I
incremental.
did, I did.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay. Incremental. That's a nice.
That's
So what? And how many associates did you have with you then?
golly. I mean, by the time the two quit at the end of December, we ended up, I don't know. I guess we kept hiring and they kept quitting. We get into 2023 and we quickly hire another one. So we end up with, we lose two, we gain two. So we probably have two or three in 23,
Hmm.
and then we keep adding in 23. And some don't stay very long. I mean, it is what it is. But by the time we get to the summer of 23, we've got three really good attorneys here and me, and
Hmm.
this thing is really starting to cook. Um,
Hmm.
Unfortunately, one of those decided to go work for a competitor, but she didn't take any of the cases with her, so I got to give her that. And I was able to hire a supervising attorney, which is the next
Hmm.
key thing in this. I was able to convince
Hmm.
Holly Grow to leave the Rosen firm. I know you and Lee Rosen have worked together. I was able to convince her to come over here and help me be a supervisor here. And so that gave me somebody to help train the attorneys. Part of the reason that I was
Hmm.
losing all these baby associates that I was hiring is I was not providing any training and I wasn't providing very good supervision. And so they were stressed
Hmm.
and anxious all the time because I'm still doing 60 or 70 cases. I'm giving them cases. I'm not reviewing what they're doing and I'm not supporting them the way they need to be supported. But by bringing
Yeah.
over a supervising attorney that's as good an attorney as I've ever come across, it was a tremendous thing for my firm because then I could hire more younger attorneys and I could properly train them, I could properly supervise them, and I could properly provide the support they need so that they would stay and grow and be better for us.
Hmm. That's an incredible lesson. So, I mean, it bears repeating. So, you're working, burning both ends. You're not given the support that your teammates need, and they're just basically burning out, and you're having to go replace them. And so, it's an endless cycle of stress for everybody.
Correct.
Okay, so that changed when you ponied up and bought in this high priced, high talented person
Correct.
to start to do that.
Correct. Who was making?
So that happened mid 23
Yeah,
ish or so.
that was in September of 23.
Okay, wow. So that made all the difference.
Yeah,
Did that give
and
you
it
the
was a lot.
stability
Like
from a standpoint of retention?
I think when I hired her, she may have been making more money than I was making. But like I had to have it.
Money
I
well
just had
spent,
to
though.
have that person to be able to go where I wanted to go.
Yeah. So let's pause on that comment right there. You're in 23, but prior to hiring her, this star that you hired, what was your vision at that point for where you wanted to go?
I don't even know. I wanted to do it better than we were doing it, right? I honest to goodness
Mhm.
believe that the level of service that my office was providing was better than the level of service of anybody that was competing against me in the market. I thought we were working the cases better. I thought we were communicating better. I thought we were getting better outcomes. And I thought that if I could just keep doing this, I would be able to help more children and do better for this society and this community by doing it the right way. If I had a
Mhm.
dollar for everybody that came in here and said they gave some Raleigh lawyer $10,000 and they don't even know if their case has been filed, I could probably retire. Like, I mean, that's where it's at.
Mhm.
The bar for customer service in the law field and in the family law field is laying on the ground. And all I was trying to do was
Mhm.
raise that bar and provide a higher level of customer service
Mhm.
than anybody else, and the rest would take care of itself. And if you can do that, I think you have a duty to do that. If you do it better than anybody else, it's your duty to scale and grow so that you can provide greater services to the community.
Wow. So you hired her in 23 September, and did your retention stabilize at that point with
It
these
did.
new
It
fresh
did.
attorneys coming? Okay.
It did. Like I said, we lost one, but the two that we hired were still with us. And then we immediately went and hired three more in the fall of 23 straight out of law school because now I had somebody who could supervise them, who could train them, who could work with them.
Mhm.
So I immediately went to the law school and I hired three brand new people on October 1st, 2023, straight out of law school. I got them
Uh-huh.
sworn in.
Okay. All right. What remind me of your manager's name, your managing
Holly
attorney's
Grow
name.
is the supervising attorney that came
Okay.
in to help.
Okay. Is she still with you?
She is. She
Is she
is.
still okay? Was she working a full caseload herself, or was she primarily focused on training
When she
and
got
leading?
here, she inherited the caseload of one of the attorneys that left to go work for the competitor. So she got about
Okay.
35 cases. By the end of 23, she had worked through those cases and she probably had 10 or 11 of the more complicated cases that the younger attorneys couldn't do. At this point, I don't
Yeah.
think she has any cases.
As of today, like
Right, right,
2025,
right.
where we're
If
sitting right
she
now. Okay.
if she's got 5, it's that's the most she has. I don't think she has any,
Yeah.
not many.
Okay. So you conclude 23. Do you recall where you were revenue wise and attorney wise?
Yeah, we come out of 23 and we've got golly, there's 6 attorneys now because we hired the 3 new ones and then we had Holly and we had the 2, yeah, we had 6 attorneys. And at this point we've hired, we're in El Salvador with our employees. We don't have any more employees in Mexico. We hired a third person in El Salvador to help us make outbound phone calls. Another part of this growth was with the client relationship manager and knowing who your leads are, you can follow up your leads for 6 months. And so by the end of 23, we're making 600 to 700 outbound phone calls a week to cold or unconverted leads, no hires, no shows, no sets, so that they can come in and be with us, because the buying time for family law can be as long as 6 to 9 months, right? It's not like
Hmm.
criminal where it's 72 hours. Like the buying cycle for family law is very long because you don't know when they're going to leave,
Hmm.
because it's a very hard
Hmm.
decision to leave. So you need to be keeping following up with people. And so
Yeah.
that made a
All
big
right. Yeah.
difference, is making those
You
outbound
just
calls.
you dropped a whole bunch of business marketing talk there that is really key stuff. So I want to unpack that. So the terminal first, let me finish the line of questioning I was going to. Do you recall what your revenue was
Yeah, I
at
think
the end of
we,
23?
we, we, we were more than two. We were
Okay,
probably in the
more
low
than
twos
two
coming
plus.
out of 2023.
Okay, got it. 2 million
Yeah.
plus. I'm not 23. Okay. All right. So walk us through the metrics that you have learned to master when it comes to calls, shows, no sets, all those words. What does all that mean? Walk us through the waterfall, the funnel, however you want to call it.
Yeah. Well, everything starts with how many leads do you have? And then
Hmm.
how many of those leads are actually qualified? That's the next.
So a lead is a phone call, a web
Right, right.
lead,
Contact
something like
form.
that.
I mean, we currently get between 5 and 600 first time phone callers a month. We get about 100 chats a month and 100 form fills a month currently.
Hmm.
And so, how many, and then the website gets, I don't know, 5,000 visitors a month or something, so, how many of those people take an action, and then how many of those people are actually in your area? We only practice in 3 of the 100 counties in North Carolina. How many people are actually have a family law matter you can help with? And you need to figure out how many of the qualified leads you have. And then
Hmm.
you need to know how many of the qualified leads are actually setting an appointment. We charge $250 for a consult. You have to pay it at the time you call. That is a huge turnoff to people. Some people don't have $250. Some people don't want to give $250 to somebody on the phone somewhere that clearly is not an American. You have to go through all of that. But if we can get, currently we're trying to see if we can get at least 100 consults a month. If we can get
Hmm.
100 consults a month, then we have to look at how many people hire you, right? And so, like,
Hmm.
our hire rate is about 38%. I think yours is about the same. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
So 1 second on the consult. So you call that a set, right?
right,
You've set the appointment, so it's a console
right,
that's set. And then now if you set 100, you're going to get a certain number of no shows that are going to decline that down to a show,
right.
someone who actually showed
Right.
up.
We actually want to get
Yeah,
100 shows actually. But because we charge for the consult in advance, our show rate is like 95, 96%.
yeah,
Most
that's
people, because
exactly
they
what
have
ours is.
paid, they paid you, they're going to come in. We can get almost all consults within 48 hours, which is key because people are in crisis. They don't want to wait 2 or 3 weeks. They're in crisis now. So
Hmm.
a vast majority show up, over 95% show up. And then, if you can get 38 to 40% to hire you, then it sort of goes from there. Then you learn what your average case
Hmm.
value is, and you can figure, and then it just becomes a math game, right? If I can get
Hmm.
if I can get 100 shows and 40 hires, and my average case value is $5,000, that's 200,000 a
Hmm.
month, and I can sort of budget that way. And you just sort of do
Yeah,
it like that.
yeah. Well, I don't know if you've noticed this, or maybe this doesn't work in your world, but we've noticed that about a third of the people we meet with never actually go to family court. Meaning they come in, get information, don't pull the trigger on their divorce or whatever's going on there. Is that what you see?
I've never tracked that. I've heard you say it repeatedly. So, and I know you've tracked it over the years. So that probably is about right. Or they do something, they don't hire an attorney because they just can't afford an attorney because attorneys are expensive. I know,
Yeah,
I
but
know,
we have a system here in Wisconsin where every case is registered on what's called CCAP, and so you can see if they ever made an appearance in court, even pro se. So that's I would think it's somewhat similar in every state because people are people, and this is over thousands of cases we've looked at this over time.
I can believe that very well may be true. I know that in Raleigh, Wake County right now, over 60% of the family law filings are pro se.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's how it is in our big county of Milwaukee.
yeah. So
It's closer to 80 actually, Milwaukee.
yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Now
Yeah.
out in the suburbs, it's a lot less where attorneys are maybe a little more affordable.
Okay, so going into 24, other than the fact that you and I met in 24, which is like a big celebration point, but all right, so going into 24, you've got Holly running the team, another 5 attorneys, and what happened in 24 last year?
Yeah, we really did well. I also hired a consultant back in 23, and Shaughnessy Mercer with Peaceful Law. I know you've met with her and have talked to her before, and
Yeah, she's fantastic. I mean, we hired her too
yeah,
for
no, she's
consulting on comp.
yeah, she's great. And so she really started to help me as well in 23, which made a big difference. Because she was coming to the office, one day a week, and she was pointing out things I could do better. She had been
Mhm.
helping Elise Bowie in Seattle, Washington, who has a very successful law firm and has a podcast out there and is a great lawyer. And she had worked with Lee Rosen before that. And so she understood a lot about what we were trying to do and the different positions, and had a lot of experience of working with bigger firms than us to help us get where we were trying to go.
Mhm.
Yeah, and things went really well in 24. We did lose a few attorneys. We lost an attorney who went back to New York to be near family, which was a huge loss. We had to fire 2 attorneys, which we had not done before, but I mean that's part of growing up too. One lied
Mhm.
to us about what happened in court, so we couldn't trust them. The other one just didn't
Yeah.
bill enough hours. So we were able to fire a couple, but we were able to hire 4 or 5 more to replace the ones that left. So we come out of
Yeah.
24 and we have 8 attorneys. And so
Wow.
yeah, it was me plus 8, and then we just hired our what would be our 10th attorney. She started this week in March of this year.
Okay.
So
Wow. So we're in March of 25 here, everyone that's
yeah,
listening. And now you've got you plus 9 other attorneys full time on your team.
correct. And we've got
Wow.
I think we have 24 or 25 total employees. I've lost track. I've got 4 in El Salvador. I've got 2 paralegals. I got 3 admin staffs. I got a virtual assistant in the Philippines that you helped me find,
Mhm.
who's doing a great job for us over there, helping us mine data and figure out where these leads
Mhm.
are coming from, and figure out some of our return on investments and stuff like that. And things are going really well here now. We're continuing to get 5-star reviews. We started making net promoter score calls, NPS calls. I know you're big on that.
Yeah.
And we're getting almost all tens with baby attorneys because, as you've said
Wow.
repeatedly on this podcast, if you communicate and you actually move the case, people will be happy. And it's not how great a lawyer you are, is are you
Yep.
communicating and are you moving the cases? And baby attorneys, they communicate and they move cases. And that's what people want. And that's why I keep getting these tens on net promoter score calls. That's why I keep getting all these 5-star reviews with brand new attorneys that other attorneys that have been out 10 years can't get anywhere near the 5-star reviews or those kind of ratings that I get because they don't communicate and they don't move the case.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, Jonathan. That just gives me chills thinking about that. Um, Out of 24, do you recall what your revenue was last year?
Yeah, it was a little over 3. We got
Okay.
to 3. It was a little over 3.
All
Um,
right. So you grew $1 million in revenue in 24.
yeah, just about.
Incremental revenue.
Yeah, just about.
Congratulations to you. Congratulations. Well done.
Yeah, it was pretty
Well
crazy.
done.
But yeah,
So that's only what 20 years in the making, right? Overnight success, right? 20 years in the
yeah,
making.
right. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. But
24 years to be exact.
yeah,
Looking at my
right.
notes, 24 years. So you started back in 2000 and you had realistically 19 years of heartache and struggle and grind to become an overnight success?
Yeah, well, to me, the success didn't really start till 23. To be honest, that's when I see the success because that's when I stopped working all the time, and it got to where I didn't have to take cases and stuff like that. I think I've got 3 cases left. I've had for 10 years each because they're high conflict cases, but other than that, I don't really have any cases now, and I can focus on running the business and building relationships and talking to people like you and Jeff Curlin and Tyler and all the people that work with y'all and other people in this world where we can sort of mastermind together and come up with better ways to do it. Oh, jeez. Oh, I'm sorry.
Jonathan keeps clicking his pen here. Okay, so Jonathan, so you basically are sitting in at least a CEO, if not kind of an investor role now in your firm, and you've got teammates that are running pretty much all aspects of your firm. From a day-to-day basis, what kind of requirements do you have on your time? What kind of meetings are you in? What decisions are you making? How much of that are you delegating?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still running the day to day of the firm, so I'm definitely not to the investor level. I'm definitely a CEO. I don't have a Jeff Curlin who works for me. So I still do most of the billing. I still write most of
Hmm.
the checks. I meet with the consultant probably 6 hours a week, and along with my
Shauna,
leadership team. Um,
Shauna, you're talking
I
about?
meet
You
with
meet with Shauna?
Shaunis, Holly Grove, my supervising attorney, my executive assistant, Simi
Hmm.
Sosa, who runs my admin side. My supervising attorney runs the attorney side. The consultants there, and the 4 of us probably meet 2 or 3 hours a week. I meet separately with Shaunis another
Hmm.
couple of hours a week to talk about what we need to do and how we do better. I spend
Hmm.
some time looking at our marketing and where the leads are coming from and how many consults we have. We do a team scorecard every week now. I look at that and
Hmm.
make sure it's right. How many hours did we bill? Uh, how much income did we generate? How many hires did we get? How many cases did we close? We track the number of closed cases. It's
Yeah.
very important to close these cases, and so we have goals for closing cases, just like we have goals for opening cases, and that's very important.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we do that. We also I spend my time. I still have these 2 or 3 cases that are high conflict, so they take a little bit of time. I also spend time. I do more networking now, right? I'm going back. I go to a lot of chamber events. Chamber breakfasts where you meet people, or sponsor after hours where everybody gets together and has a drink and passes out business cards. So
Hmm.
I'm back to doing sort of the face-to-face networking that is how I helped grow this business to start with, that I couldn't do when I was working 7 days a week. But now that I have time, I really enjoy being in the community and helping people. So, and I still have to review some of the drafts of these young attorneys. Now there's 8 or 9 of them. The supervisor can't review them all. So I do review some drafts that they send to me, but I'd much rather spend 10 minutes reviewing a draft than 2 hours writing a draft. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, I wanted to ask you about your marketing mix again because you went from 2 million to 3+ million. Did you start to spend more in marketing? Are you spending less? What's going on in your marketing
I mean,
spend?
we are spending more on marketing. We got into local service ads in 2022, and then we went
Hmm.
to uncapped budgets on local service ads in 2023, at the end of 23 into 24. So
Yeah.
now we're spending about 7 or 8 thousand a month on local service ads, which is a version of Google pay per click in and around Raleigh. We also are now doing pay per click. And we're just getting started in that, and we've seen some success early. We're spending probably
Hmm.
4 or 5 thousand a month on pay per click now. The website itself and all the work that Postali does for me with the blogs and the publicist, and they do a lot more than just a website for me.
Yeah.
They do me a monthly newsletter. That's costing, and then of course they do the Facebook ads. We're on Facebook now. I mean, I probably give them 10 or 11 just for what they do.
So
So
you're spending more, but
yeah,
as a percentage of your revenue, is that stayed stable or is it
it's
declined?
still
What's
it's
it?
still below 15%, which is my goal.
Okay.
I don't know the
Yeah.
exact number, but it's still below 15%. But that's the goal, is to keep the advertising at 15% less of the revenue, 15% of the revenue or less.
I know so many attorneys that complain about LSAs, the local service ads. And the reason why they can't get them to work is they don't have your type of a system where your funnel's so tight. So congratulations, because that opens up so many more marketing channels for you to get into
Right. Well, the thing is,
because you're not dropping
right.
them.
Well, 90% of those local service ad calls are junk. They're not qualified leads, but you got to go through them to find the ones that are. I mean, if I get
Yeah.
170 local service ad calls in a month, I'm going to only set 20 of them, maybe 25. But if I can get 7 or 8 to hire me at $8,000 a shot, I mean,
Yeah.
I'll
That's
make I'll
$1,000
spend
cost.
8 to make
Yeah.
50 any day of the week.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. So just in closing here, let's go back to 2018. Okay. You're running ragged and you're on the elevator going up, and then Jonathan from 2025 gets on the elevator. You've got 30 seconds to give Jonathan your best advice on what to do. What are you going to tell him?
Don't quit. Keep trying to be better the next day than you were the day before. Don't let anybody tell you can't be what you want to be. Don't let anybody derail you from what you're trying to do. Don't let any single employee, what they say, they're quitting, their attempt to take your business, to undo it. Get off of the scarcity mindset. There's plenty out there for everybody, including me, including you. You just have to go do it. And you
Yeah.
just have to be better today than you were yesterday. And you have to make a decision to be better. Because if you're not making decisions to be better and educate yourself and get a coach and learn the things and do what coaches say and reading books and all this stuff, like I wasn't reading books before 2020. Now I read books all the time. I wasn't listening to podcasts before 2020. Now I listen to 10 podcasts a week. Like you have to educate yourself, and so that you can be better. And so that's the thing that you had to do. I had to deal with my anxiety. I had to get a new counselor. I had to deal with that. Like all of those things you have to work through. But if you do it, you can have the success in the life of your dreams. A life that I
Yeah.
never got this far in my dreams, right? The trips I get to
Yeah.
take and the time I get to spend with my family is unbelievable. The control of my schedule that I currently have, where I can just kind of do what I want. My son just got done
Mhm.
playing 39 JV high school basketball games. I went to 31 of them, and the only ones I missed was because I was traveling to business coach conferences or work stuff. And they were at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I went to 31
Mhm.
games and they were at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Like the thought that I could have done that in 2020, no way.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, I want to just testify that you eat your own dog food on this because you've shared a whole lot about your firm today that a competitor would probably think I'm not going to share that with my competitors. Any of your competitors can listen to this and know what you're doing, but you shared it all out there and just with that abundance mindset that you lived out. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, and like I said, there's enough for everybody, right? Particularly in family law where there's not enough family lawyers. Like if you
Yeah.
just make a decision to be better every day and realize that there's enough for everybody, you're going to be successful. The problem is people do not make decisions to be better. They spend too much time working in their business, not on their business, and they just end up in the exact same place they were over and over and over, and they don't move forward.
Hmm.
And if
Yeah.
you make a decision to not grow your business and not invest in yourself and not get an education and be better, that's a decision as well. No decision is a decision. And I don't think people
Right.
realize that.
Yeah. Well, how would someone get a hold of you if they wanted to reach out to you?
Yeah, they can reach out to me at breedenfirm.com is our website. I'm on LinkedIn at Jonathan Breeden. That's Breeden. I'm on Twitter at Breeden Law NC. They tell me I'm on TikTok and Instagram at Breeden Law Office, where I share cuts of my podcast. I have a podcast called Best of Johnston County, where I interview interesting people here in the Johnston County suburbs of Raleigh community that I find interesting. It's absolutely fascinating. I learn so much every time I do it. So I mean, we're out there. You know me at Jonathan at breedenlaw.com. I still got the breedenlaw.com email, even though my website's
Yeah.
breedenfirm.com. But yeah, I'm out there and be glad to answer any questions about what I've done or how I've done it. And I would highly recommend Richard James and Your Practice Mastered or postali.com. That's POSTALI for the marketing out of Columbus, Ohio. Great, 4eyes.com, 4iiz.com for a CRM. They've done a great job with me, Bert Diener and their team. So there's tons of people. Like I didn't do this myself, right? One of the best books I read
Yeah.
was by Dan Kennedy, Who Not How. who can do it, not how are you going to do it. And if you start
Yeah.
with that thought, it's a lot easier.
Yeah. I think you meant to say Benjamin Hardy on that book, right?
Benjamin Hardy.
You said Dan Kennedy
Yeah, Dan
wrote
Kennedy.
Who Not How.
Yeah, well,
I think Ben Hardy wrote Who Not How, if I'm not mistaken.
maybe it's him and Dan Kennedy. Then Dan Kennedy's part of that book.
Oh, you're Sullivan, Dan
Dan
Sullivan.
Sullivan.
Yeah, Dan Kennedy's a legend, so I get those confused too.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, yeah,
All right, cool.
awesome. Yeah, that's a fantastic book. I've read it 3 times. Love that book.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks a lot.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the story that Jonathan shared with us. And if you got value from this video, I encourage you to check out this video right here, the family law strategy to rule them all. And I hope this also adds value to your practice. I'll see you over there.